I'm Stephanie Jones, Director of e-Business at the SEMA Data Co-op. I've worked hands-on with data standardization since 2003. I've had the opportunity to learn from and work beside some of the folks instrumental in shaping the standards in the early years. I've designed systems and published thousands of data files using the standards, and have taught several courses to share my cultivated knowledge. I hope you find useful information in this video that can assist in better understanding the standards and how to use them to benefit your organization. Welcome. In this video, we'll cover what is PIEs, PIEs standard reference tables and coded values, and how PIEs is structured into segments. So let's start with the basic question, what is PIEs? PIEs is the powerful data standard that's now widely accepted and used in the automotive aftermarket today. It conveys important product details about the part, and it organizes it so that it can be communicated electronically. PIEs is important to resellers because it helps them with selling and marketing products correctly. The PIEs standard has over 300 elements that can be selected from to convey proper messaging about your product. And data that is used to populate a PIEs file might come from multiple sources within an organization. PIEs brings all of these silos of information together into one delivery file so that resellers can then use it in their own various departments and systems. PIEs is where we tell the product story. Let's look at how the two aftermarket standards, ACES and PIEs, differ. ACES is where all of the vehicle applications go. So basically your year, make, model, engine or transmission information. So what this part number will fit. PIEs, on the other hand, is where all of the rich detail about the product goes. Now PIEs has its own structure and does not reference databases that we map or code against like VCDB or QDB in the ACES standards. Instead, PIEs is structured into segments or buckets to organize hundreds of detailed descriptor fields. Through PIEs, we convey all of the text, images, videos, pricing, and packaging that helps us describe and differentiate each part. Similarly, like ACES, the standardized delivery structure is XML. Now, for the most part, PIEs is sent in a text-based format, with one exception I'll cover later on. In ACES, all of the information in the XML is coded because you've got the VCDB and the QDB that give you those codes. PIEs, for the most part, does not work like that. ACES and PIEs are complementary, but they're also intended to stand alone, meaning you do not always have to have an ACES application file if you're using a PIEs file. Prior to PIEs, product details were very hard to exchange electronically. It was time-consuming and a lot of valuable information was just not getting communicated. Since the standardization of this information, our industry has transformed, speeding the process of transferring data to resellers and strengthening e-commerce selling of aftermarket products. So let's look at the structures that support PIEs. We've got the PCDB, which is basically a system category database. We use this reference table to classify our products. Each part number in PIEs will have a part type or a part terminology assignment so that we understand the classification for it. PIEs also references the brand table. Brand and parent companies are consistently identified across the industry in this table. Next is the product attribute database, and this is what standardizes form, fit, and function details about your product. And as I mentioned earlier, there was one exception in how the XML file will work. Well, PADB is the exception, and it is a reference database that PIEs uses to codify attributes. So that one we'll dig into a little bit deeper on another video. I just wanted to point out that one is the one exception to text-based information that's typically sent in a PIEs file, not coded information. Lastly, we have ISO tables. These are global standards that PIEs references. And the last one is PIEs' own code value table. So the point of all of these structures for pies, because we're covering such a huge amount of information, is that all of these help us to speak the same language, and it really helps us ensure clean communication in these electronic files. All right, now that we've covered what pies is and the tables and databases that are used in the standard, let's dig into the pies segments themselves. So here on the screen you see how the data will basically be organized in an export file. So at the top you've got a header, bottom a trailer segment, and these open and close your export file. And basic information like who you are, the date that file's being sent, if it's a full or a net change file, and a count of the part numbers in the file are included in these segments. Some fields are mandatory, some are optional, and that's throughout all segments in pies. And this gives us the freedom to send the right information as needed. Now, you'll notice that there's some segments that hang left on this diagram further than others. What this means is these are segments that can stand alone. So the next one down is the price sheet segment. And this means that just a header, a price sheet, and a trailer segment can be sent to be a valid pies XML file. Now, your price sheet itself doesn't contain any pricing pertaining to a part number itself. This is just the segment to describe the price sheet itself. So its name, number, effective date, its currency, and if there's a zone or a region that it applies to. So we don't want to confuse this segment with the price segment that resides in the item segment. So this is just details about the price sheet itself. The other standalone segment here is market copy. Market copy is an interesting segment because it allows us to send data at a level higher than part number. So anything that gets sent here would be at a special code that would identify if it's a brand or a part type or even a parent category. So there's a handful of ways that we can classify that information. And in this we send descriptive content. So we can send features and benefits, or we can send paragraphs of information about either our brand or company as mentioned. So this segment can get a little bit tricky to use, but it's actually very powerful because it's a great way to express a lot of detail efficiently, because you're not working at an item level where you may have a lot of repeating information. As an example, in market copy, you'll see that there's a digital asset segment right below it, so the fourth one down on your screen. So you can use this to send, say, your company logo. So you could identify your brand by its logo, or your company by its logo there in the market copy segment. So you wouldn't have to necessarily have all of that information, that logo sent at an item level. Let's dig into the item segment next, and here's where things get exciting. The item segment is the key segment for part level information, and this is probably where you're going to spend most of your time when you're pulling together a pies file. The information provided here is critical for your receiver's business. This segment houses all of the basic part level information, such as what category this part is in, its UPC or G10 code, how many of this part goes on a vehicle, the brand that's selling this part, and whether or not this part number will have any ACES applications associated with it. So with the item segment, we are creating all of the basic data, all of the key details about the part number. So once that is established, then we can access as many lower level segments as needed to add more information to the file about the part number. So let's look at those subsegments next. Okay, let's take a look at the description segment. And as you notice, there's a bunch of ways to describe our item here if you look over at the right-hand side of your screen. Seems like a lot, of ways to describe a part, but each description is very useful and is used in a lot of different ways by your data receivers. This is a very important subsegment of the item segment because it gives us the ability to really maximize the quality of information that we're going to provide for the item. The description segment is a good place to also demonstrate how looping in the standard works. So when you look at the PIES document, you'll see each segment with the fields that pertain to that segment, and then some fields that are labeled codes. So you'll see that there in the middle, there's code ABR, and then that's listed as the field name as it's an abbreviated description that's 12 characters long. So that's how that reads. So here in the description segment, we see the label of the segment, which is CO1. Then there's a maintenance type that signifies if the information is add, change, or delete. Then field CO5 is the description code. And this means that there is a supporting table to break things down even further. The right side shows the codes. So as we look through the list, there's short, long, invoice, marketing, keyword descriptions, or slang descriptions that can be used. Each of these have very specific usages and field links and rules that apply. And on the bottom left is a couple of simple examples of how a short, an invoice, and a long description will vary. The description segment gives ample choices when it comes to maximizing the information and the descriptions that we want to use for our products. So we want to keep the message in each description type very clear, and we want to follow the rules that are specified for each type. And if the next question is, well, where do I find these rules? You can check out Auto Care Association's website and go into a section that they have called Learning Lab. And there you'll find different volumes of white papers that have been written on the PIES and the ACES standards that will give you a lot more detailed information on field usage and rules. Okay, let's jump back to the segments and we'll go through the pricing segment next. And this is where we send the specific pricing for the item itself. So it's not the same as the price sheet segment that we discussed a few moments ago. In this segment, you must reference a price sheet and you share more details such as what type of currency that you're using and the price of the product itself. Now here we can also cover things like price levels, price break quantities, if it's a publishable or net price, anything like that goes here. And just like we saw in the description segment, the pricing segment also uses codes to bring the information down another level. There are many price types that can be used, such as jobber, retail, map, or even user-defined fields. You can see the list there, some of them on the right side of the screen. Multiple price sheets are allowed to be referenced in the pricing segment, and many different price types can be used within the price segment. So if we look back on the other side of the screen with the price type D35, we would use the D40 field for the actual price. And this is what allows us to loop this segment so that you can have multiple prices because they're different types of price codes in the file. This next segment is the EXPI, the Extended Product Information segment. And here you see that there's 7 different groups of information that can be organized under this segment that can show a lot of deep detail related to each area. The first area is core, and this is for items and returns on your product if there's a core requirement. The second one is hazardous. This would include items like your MSDS sheet or emissions flags, things like that. Now, we can't talk about emissions without digressing a minute to make mention of the highly important CARB regulation. In addition to the emissions code that's been in the PI standard for quite a while now, the Carb EO, or the executive order number, must now be provided to resellers as well. So from a high level, CARB regulates vehicle parts that directly or indirectly affect air quality. Affected parts that do not have EO numbers cannot be sold or used in California. And recently, several manufacturers, resellers, and retailers have had the pain of being fined significant amounts of money for selling affected parts that do not have valid EO numbers. So the way that it works is manufacturers or suppliers of the affected parts must get them certified that they improve air quality and or do not increase air pollution. So once certified, an affected part is issued an executive order number, which allows it to be sold in the state of California. The EO number issued is vehicle dependent. This means the EO is not issued at a part number level. It is at the part number and the application level. So it's possible that your part could be certified for a Chevrolet truck, but not a GM truck, even though your part fits the same. So from a data delivery perspective, PIEs is at the part level or higher. So the EO number will actually go in the ACES file so that the vehicle application can show that the EO number is available. Now there's a designated place to set up EO numbers in the QDB, in the qualifier database, as a qualifier. And this is the standardized place to convey this important EO number. There are at least 13 other states and the federal EPA are reviewing CARB requirements, and New York has adopted very similar regulations as well. So CARB is here to stay. Okay, let's jump back out to the rest of the EXPI groups. The third one is the part area. This is where information regarding your EOs, your original equipment manufacturer or original equipment supplier name or item IDs will go. And it also lets you flag whether your part is remanufactured or replaced. Fourth is the return area. So this would have information such as warranty details. Fifth is the regulate area, and this indicates which state or zip or city the item is regulated in. 6 is ship area, and this is where country of origin, the harmonization codes, or even the NAFTA codes go. The product life cycle is also here, and this tells if the product is available to order or discontinued. There is a table of life cycle codes that you can use to select from in the standard. So it would be one of the things we would look up in the PIEs code table. And then last is the stock area. And this allows for sales popularity information, pallet layer, or stock status information. So to wrap the EXPI segment up, it's kind of a catch-all segment, and there's over 40 fields that fit within the different areas here. Moving along, the package segment is next, and here's where we show shipping dimensions and weights. It allows you to send this at 4 different levels. If your product ships as an each, or if you ship it as a pack, or a case, or a pallet. You can identify that here in the packaging segment. So this segment loops like others that we've seen today. So you may ship your product at a consumer level, at the each level, but you may also ship cases of it, and both would be acceptable to include in the standard. There is one segment that falls below the packaging segment, and it's called the hazardous material segment. Now, it's not a real commonly used segment, but it's very valuable to suppliers of products that do fall under government shipping regulations. The reason there is a segment for this, and it's not just covered in the hazardous area of the EXPI, is because certain hazmat rules and regulations may apply to your product that is dependent on the packaging that you're shipping it in or the transportation method. So there may be different government regulations on a case of a product than at the consumer each level. Kit is one of the most important but least utilized segments of PIEs. If you sell a part that is comprised of other individual parts that contain other part numbers, then you can establish that parent-child relationship in this segment. So if you offer a suspension kit like you see on the screen, those parts that comprise the kit that can be ordered will go here. So the rule of thumb for the kit segment, if you sell a kit, a set, or an assembly part, it needs to go into this segment. And in the newest PIES 6.7 standards release, there's description fields available now that give this segment even more powerful details. The interchange segment relays interchange data for part numbers in relation to alternative brand owners' part numbers. So if you have a part that interchanges with an OE part, or if you can substitute your part with another aftermarket supplier's part, that information goes here. You can also denote quality grade levels, so if it's a standard or a premium item. So there again, it is a unique segment that not everybody's going to need to use, but if your part functions the same as another in the industry, that relationship can be set up here. I've saved my most favorite two segments for last. The first one is the attribute segment. Now, why should we all love attributes? It's because here that some of the most distinguishing characteristics about your part, those critical nuggets of information that really shows how your part functions, or its physical characteristics, or something operational or performance goes here. And it's in a standardized manner to help set your product apart from the competition. A few years back, the aftermarket industry decided that this wealth of information was so important in describing and selling parts that it dedicated an entire database to standardized attributes for every part type available in the PCDB. So it's a dynamic database that continues to grow. Today there's well over 11,000 part types with over 100,000 defined attributes that are available for us today. One thing that we hear most from receivers about the value of this database and by standardizing attributes is that it makes information searchable and comparable on websites. And that is good news for anyone wanting to differentiate their part and sell more of them. It provides us a more sophisticated data management opportunity. Now, the PADB is the database that manages attributes. And earlier in this video, we mentioned that the PADB is a coded database. So when you send your attribute that's found in the PADB, you'll actually send it in codes, not in text. So what do you do if it's your part type is possibly not available in this database? Well, you can send in a custom attribute. So in the example on the screen that shows the attributes that are standardized for seat covers, you may say that I want to include headrest covered as a yes/no in my list. And that can easily be done, and that information can be transmitted to your receivers. The PADB is managed by AutoCare Association, just like all of the other standards. And it is a separate subscription from the other standards, but a very, very important one. And the SDC works closely with AutoCare on the growth and the accuracy of this database because we feel that it's very important to people selling products in the SEMA space. And last is my other favorite segment, digital assets. Now, this could be a session all on its own. Do you want to sell more parts online? Well, it's simple. You describe it extremely well, and you need to have knockout images and videos. Your videos are important. In fact, one study shows that viewers are 85% more likely to purchase a product after watching a product video. Visuals are processed 60,000 times faster by the human brain than text. So remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's your product image that makes that lasting first impression. Images matter, and more importantly, good images matter. YouTube has become the second largest search engine. It's bigger than Bing, Yahoo, Ask, and AOL combined. So don't underestimate the power that comes in a 1 or 2 minute video clip about your product. Consumers are shopping products a lot different than they did 15 years ago. In the PI standard, there are many file formats and types of images that can be sent. The digital asset segment is another looping segment, meaning that you can send multiple digital assets for a part number. A few examples on the screen here that may be sent for a seat cover is an image of the product mounted on the vehicle, a lifestyle image that shows the product in use. This is a highly effective image style for accessories. Installation instructions and videos to further educate the consumer about your product would go here. So one interesting study also showed that a clothing website saw a 27% increase on conversion rate when they added a 360, one of those 360-degree images. Consumers are trying to get closer to the real feel of a product, and rotating images can help. High-quality images are effective selling tools, and they need to be a focal point of good product data. So let's summarize all of the things that we've learned about PIEs so far. We've learned that PIEs is comprised of segments, all of which are used to provide details about the part. PIEs is sent to data receivers in XML format. We're not required to send all fields in each segment of PIEs. We just send applicable data. And lastly, PIEs is standardized through databases, external reference tables, and its own code value table. Well, that wraps up the basics of PIEs and its structure. To learn more about PIEs, check out our 201 PIEs training video. And as always, our data lab is available to answer any questions. Thanks for watching.